Greetings and greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Sir Brandel, Immortal Brandel, Brandon, whichever you prefer. I'm a residential black host of the Infinite Animal Syndicate. I'm here by these lovely people to talk about Dino Crisis. It's episode discussion, so yeah, there's that. Introduce yourself, Renegade.
Would
Yep.
you?
Okay, Dom, you go first. Then.
Damn it!
Hi, my
Hey,
name's
hey,
Dom.
I'm here.
Oh,
I was
okay.
I was saying that Capcom put in a lot of work with Regina's booty, and I love it. How's it going, everyone?
Hey. All right, Dom, you go.
So as I was saying, hi. I've played Dino Crisis. Played Dino Crisis 2. And I've kind of played Dino Stalker and Dino Crisis 3, but we'll get into that.
All right, Nemesis.
What's going on, guys? Nemesis here, back again with Renegade, Operatives, Bile, Devil Dom, and it's glad to be here. I'm a huge Dino Crisis fan, huge Resident Evil fan. But yeah, thanks for having me on again. It's really appreciated.
All right, Diva. I'm gonna call you Diva.
Anyway, how's it going, guys? Hey Deva, actually, it's a play on words. Anyways, I'll tell you guys more about it later. But anyways, I just want to say thank you guys for having me here again, and I do love me some Dino Crisis, so I'm really excited for this podcast.
All right, good. All right, to start off this discussion, I'll read number one. What is your first experience with Dino Crisis? Did you enjoy the influence of the gameplay, more or less, of Resident Evil? From what they introduced, explain what made it distinct and playable. Sorry, enjoyable. I apologize for that. I'm tired. I'll go first actually, because mine is kind of similar to other franchises I got into. I started with Dino Crisis 2, I believe, or it was the first one. I think it was 2. Around the same time, I played Resident Evil 3 and the Democratic franchise back in 2008. Because my mom's friend was over and he had like this buttload of games in his binder case. So I was playing through them and I came across Dino Crisis and Resident Evil and then Devil May Cry. So I didn't get back into the franchise until around maybe 2014 through 2016 when I hacked my PSP, so I was able to get the PS1 classics. And since then, I've been off and off playing the game, especially the second one, because I think it's more straightforward than the first one, which is why I play that one more.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'll go next. Actually, my first experience with Dino Crisis was actually when I used to live in the Philippines, and my family used to own a computer shop. It's kind of like an internet cafe, but instead we have like PlayStations and all that. And I remember, I forgot which Resident Evil it was, but there was like a little demo trailer with one of the Resident Evil specials, and it showed like a quick trailer of Dino Crisis, right? And everybody was literally saying this is Resident Evil with dinosaurs. So got playing the first one, and I mean, it literally did feel like Resident Evil just with dinosaurs overall. You know, it had the puzzles, it had like the darker theme, slow paced, but you know, and then we go to 2, but which I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But overall, it was really enjoyable. Loved the puzzles. It was a little bit more challenging in certain aspects compared to regular Resident Evil, and overall, it was a great game.
My first experience with Dino Crisis when I first found out about it, this was back during the era of Resident Evil 3. There was a demo trailer that I saw, and I didn't know what it was at first, so I ended up checking that out. And once I found out what the game was and who was behind it, which was Shinji Mikami, I gained some interest in it, and since I was a huge Resident Evil fan back in the late 90s, I played it for the PlayStation, and I loved it ever since.
All right, I guess I'll go next. So my introduction to Dino Crisis, I think it was due to the fact that a relative had the game, and I checked it out from him. I think that was during the time where there were certain like Dino Crisis demos rebundled and packaged with RE3, and I was like, oh, hold on here. What is this game like? It's sort of, Resident Evil with dinosaurs, so I wanted to check it out. And I just liked the fact that it was a bit more faster, it was a bit more ferocious with the enemies, and you just have to get out of that occasional slow zombie mindset when you play this game, and I like that it forced you to think faster than you usually would with like Resident Evil 2. So I played it, enjoyed it, played Dino Crisis 2 on PSN when that came out, and I love that game even though they changed the gameplay formula around like a lot with that game. And Dino Crisis 3, well, we're going to get into that later, but let's just say, yeah, that game is not well appreciated for particular reasons, and I kind of want to talk about it. So I'm going to move on to the next person who wants to go next.
Which would be me, because I haven't gone.
Mhm.
So I played this series like pretty late. I got into it, I think, about 2016 or 2017, so fairly late. And it was a franchise that I've heard about, but I've always wanted to get into, and mostly it was just because like I would hear like a lot of Resident Evil like content creators talk about it and stuff like that. So then I finally managed to get both the first and second game on a PSN sale. Played both of those. I really enjoyed the survival aspect of the first game. There's a lot of things that I dislike about the first game, but overall, I did think it was a very enjoyable experience. And then going on to the second game, kind of the same thing where it's like I enjoyed what that game did, but there was also some things where I just felt like it wasn't exactly what I would want out of a Dino Crisis game, especially like now too. But we'll save that for a little bit later. I fairly recently just started playing Dino Stalker or Dino Crisis Gun Survivor 3, depending on the region that you're in, and then Dino Crisis 3 as well. And that's not both games I haven't finished, but I do intend on finishing those. So at least I got started on those, and I kind of know the history of those games at the very least. So I can read off number 2 if you guys want.
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Okay, how do you feel about the distinct transition from Dino Crisis 1 to Dino Crisis 2? The survival panic formula changed into the more arcadey style like action. Was the genre shift appreciated or disliked by you personally?
So can I actually go first on this one? Because Dom, I know you specifically have a lot to say about this one though, but I want to get mine out the way so that way everybody else can go.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, for me, I kind of did appreciate them changing the formula because of it gives it its own identity. Because what's the first thing you hear Dino Crisis for most people? It's Resident Evil with dinosaurs. So by them changing the style of it into what Dino Crisis 2 is, then no, I'm okay with it. There's some things they could have toned back on. I will admit that though, but overall though, it's a very solid action game. Compared to his survival horror predecessor. I can understand why people will prefer Dino Crisis 1 over 2, because believe it or not, though, it's not an uncommon opinion to actually like 1 over 2. It's just the fandom enjoys 2 more than the rest of the series. That's it is what it is. But I can understand where they're coming from, because as a survival horror, it's pretty unique in its own way compared to Resident Evil, because there's a lot of aspects that they don't use in Resident Evil, even now in the current year.
Mm.
So overall, though, I personally enjoy the tonal shift between 1 and 2. We don't talk about 3, not yet.
Yeah. No, yeah.
So anyway, like for me, because as Brandon mentioned, like some people do not like the shift from 1 to 2. So when I played 2, I was really not feeling the shift. I actually really enjoyed the survival aspect of Dino Crisis 1, and I felt like that aspect alone was really good. I could understand people not really liking the horror aspect, and I was kind of in agreement that yeah, like if Dino Crisis were to come back, that yeah, it should probably be a more action-based game, because well, most people, when you talk to them about dinosaurs, they're not really afraid, even though I understand the concept of being afraid of giant carnivorous lizards basically that are prehistoric. Um, so when it comes to Dino Crisis 2, I don't particularly think it's a bad game. I just was not a huge fan of it going from Dino Crisis 1 being a survival horror game to Dino Crisis 2 being a arcadey shoot 'em up type of game. Again, not to say that it's a bad game by any means. It's actually a really fun game overall. I will say though that after playing Dino Stalker and Dino Crisis 3 though, I probably have a little bit more appreciation for Dino Crisis 2 because I feel as though at least, 2 was enjoyable for what it was, whereas Dino Stalker just kind of seems like it's as an arcade game, and Dino Crisis 3 is a thing. So
Yeah, at least 2 stick to what was previously established as far as characters and settings on like 3 and Stalker.
yeah, well, actually, Stalker does kind of tie into some stuff with 2, as far as like story points are concerned. So, and I have heard quite a bit of people actually mention that Dino Stalker feels more like a Dino Crisis 3 than Dino Crisis 3.
I believe it.
To be honest, for this question, Dino Crisis 2 was my favorite in the series. And for the reason being, exactly what you guys mentioned was the whole shoot 'em up kind of arcadey feel. It just felt perfect just for this game. I don't know what it was. It was just like you said. I mean, when we think of dinosaurs, we don't really usually think about like, oh, somebody like is super scary, right? But
Yeah.
it just felt pretty good overall. I mean, they made it work with a faster paced gameplay, right? Especially made sense with all the raptors and all the pterodactyls and all that. They just made it work, and it was something that I do commend with this one is that it was so easy to pick up. Like it just felt natural. Anybody could literally just sit down and pick it up real quick.
I agree with you.
Mean, casual gamer. I mean, think about it. Anybody who's just gonna sit down and try to play Resident Evil, it was difficult just to start off. I'm talking about the older ones, especially with the tanky controls and the kind of like different, controls where you have to press up and square, and then it's kind of different navigation. Here, you can literally just analog stick like to whatever direction you want to go. You press one button to shoot, and not only that, you're really versatile in this one because you could actually shoot them up and run at the same time compared to the other, past series from Capcom. But also the integration of like
melee. And melee, depending on your weapons.
Yes, and the sub weapons and the combination of that, and also a little bit of like the RPG element where you rack up points from like depending on whatever area you go through, and you shoot them up the dinosaurs and all that, and then you get to upgrade your weapons or increase their ammo capacity. I think it was just an overall great. I feel like that's what Dino Crisis really needed to be, just to make itself like he mentioned earlier, like to be really distinct compared to Resident Evil, because we don't want to. I mean, yeah, it's great, Resident Evil dinosaurs. I mean, all the Resident Evil fans will flock to it, but if you want like a new fan base to actually come into like just to give this new franchise like a breath of fresh air, I mean, they had to kind of stray away from the Resident Evil series, and it made total sense, and that's why I love this game like so much.
All right, anybody else need to go?
When I first saw the transition from Dino Crisis 1 and 2, I thought it was a pretty interesting change. I did like the new characters, like Dylan for one of them. I thought, the action sequences were actually pretty good for the second one. I thought it was a good turnaround from survival horror to action. However, after going and playing the third one, I can honestly say that compared to the second one, I don't think there should have been a third one in the making if they were going to go that route. I honestly think that it should have been done better to a point where I think Dino Crisis 3 should have been a game to go back to its original roots of the first one. It's cool for a certain change for one, but I mean, for me, the second one is not a bad game, but I sincerely wasn't a huge fan of it. I do like the first one a lot more. with the arcade style, I thought that was a good change as well. There are certain aspects that Capcom should have changed compared to the first one. But you know, it was a pretty interesting change with character development, story wise. I sincerely think that there should, just on the side note, I really think there should be a fourth game to kind of be a continuation for where the second one took place, because we really didn't have any answers what happened after that, because it ended on a cliffhanger. So I
I
think
think that's
there's.
a question later in the doc too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up. But
Yeah,
personally,
Dino Crisis 3 stuff is literally the next question. So save your thoughts on 3 until the next question if you can help it.
oh, okay. Yeah, but compared to Dino Crisis 1 and 2, I am still a fan of the first one more, but I think the second one is a fun game. It is a fun game. So I did like the change. I did like the characters, and yeah, that's really all I can say about that.
It's a bit of a. This question is kind of weird for me because, I mean, they can make dinosaurs scary because we've seen it before in like some pieces of Jurassic Park, where they had some horror elements to that movie when they were like hiding in the trucks and shit like that, and the dinosaurs were creeping up on the windows. I think that's what they were going for. The issue is that it's not as much of a drastic genre shift as it was with like something like RE4, 5, and 6, because they kept continuing with that playstyle when they knew that people really loved the survival horror. With this one, it felt like it was more accepted because the game shifted from just being a Resident Evil clone to something else different. So in that case, it felt generally accepted. But in terms of what I enjoyed more, I do love the horror elements and themes of Dino Crisis 1, but after playing it recently, the problem that I have with that game is just I feel like the puzzles kind of break the genre and the pacing just a little bit due to them being so hard. It took me a while to figure out what those DDK codes were, and once I finally got it, I'm like, holy shit, I could have just done this. And there's time puzzles, and there's also stuff that locks you out of equipment. So it's kind of a brain buster, but I did appreciate that in a sense.
I don't mean to cut you off really quick, but there's also a puzzle in the game that if you fuck up, you actually lose out on a potential scenario route. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so I felt like the first game and the second game, they did have some criticisms, but overall they were solid games, and I can see why they tried to break away from the original formula, because games that were spin-offs before from Resident Evil, like Devil May Cry and Onimusha, they also did that as well by incorporating more and more of their own gameplay and new additions that made them completely unrecognizable when you go back and see they were Resident Evil clones with the first entries. Now they're like full-fledged hack and slash games. So I think they had to do that, and if I were to say, if you're gonna make like another Dino Crisis, just make it a hybrid. Like, you have horror, you have action. I don't think that's ever really been touched up on before outside of Evil Within. So I thought it was a nice transition because Dino Crisis 2 is still a solid game in its own right.
All right, everybody got their own things on. We're good here.
Yeah, we're good to move on to number 3, which is a terrible fucking game.
All right, you read off number 3.
yeah, you can read that.
Sure. Did you ever hear about the infamous Dino Crisis 3 for the original Xbox? What are your thoughts on the game if you've seen it or played it?
Fucking sucks.
Okay, I'm gonna actually do a minor devil's advocate here. I'm gonna be honest here though.
Yeah.
If it was not Dino Crisis on the title, even though the game itself is janky, you know, it has its own problems though. If it was not labeled Dino Crisis, it would have been better off. Because I'll be honest though, like visually and the settings of it is actually really cool. It's a cool idea for a sci-fi shooter.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if it wasn't called Dino Crisis and it was its own spin-off or something, then yeah, I can definitely see that. But like, it's just not Dino Crisis. It just completely was the killer of the series, and it's just, that Capcom could have done so much with this game. Like, it looks like a cool game if it wasn't Dino Crisis. It looks more like a it could be a game that does take place in the future, and it could be a cool futuristic game, but like, take the Dino Crisis title out of that and you got a pretty cool futuristic shooter game, you know?
Yeah.
Can I? Oh, okay. My question is, all right, you say that it doesn't feel like a Dino Crisis because it was just so much of a change compared to the previous game, right? But couldn't we have said like Dino Crisis 2 was actually a pretty different game compared to the first game?
Well,
The
I mean, with
difference
Dino
is-
Crisis 2, it felt more
But-
like Dino Crisis, you know, because it did have a solid story and good character development, and it does tie in with, you know, you can actually compare this to a Dino Crisis game. You know, certain changes, yes, but when you compare 2 to 3, there's just no similar. Like, you cannot relate those two
It's
games.
literally night and day difference. Because the setting is different, the characters is different.
Like, the characters are
placement-
boring. Like, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
it's all
There's
over the
no good character development. Like, you don't have the development of characters like you did in the first and second game, and that's where, you know, it just was all half-assed. Like, they're not believable at all. It's one of those characters that you have no interest in seeing in the future. It doesn't work.
Okay, there is one thing I want to say because I have not played this game, so I don't have really a lot of opinions on it. But here's one thing I will say that was a cool idea. I did like the fact that the dinosaurs in space were like parasitic and infected. That looked good from a visual standpoint. That's the only credit, that's the only merit I will give that game. I thought that was actually a pretty cool idea because it's something that we haven't really seen before. Other than that, I heard the game has terrible camera angles, terrible movement. It's hard to see shit. It's just like, and it's weird too. It's like they had a AAA team behind this game, and I think it just got like shuffled in development when they had to redo all the assets because of the controversy, which we'll speak about later. And they couldn't really make up for it with the deadline, so they had to make this game. They had to rush it out, and it turned out to be a mess.
Total
That
cash
sounds,
grab. That's what it was.
That's typical Capcom thing back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, plus
Yeah,
they wanted to put it on Xbox, so that's kind of a weird idea too.
Honestly, given real quick, Dom, given the technology it has to offer, though, I don't blame them because now Team Ninja did it with Ninja Gaiden, so
That's true.
it was the definitive console to play games on for like literally the best experience in terms of hardware and frame rates and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I think with Dino Crisis 3, because like I've played a little bit of it, haven't completed it obviously, but from what I know of it, like what I can tell from the game based off of what I have played so far is that it's a game that has similar issues to Devil May Cry 2, where the color palette for the environments is very samey. There's only like, you know, one color and like various shades of that one color for the most part, which kind of makes the environments look very dull and boring. But you know, despite that, it has some very interesting ideas that could work for a Dino Crisis game or could work for another spin-off entirely. Like, we don't know. I think like in terms of like Dino Crisis 3, like had they had made this a game where it's like, oh, we're gonna have this take place as a maybe immediate thing that happens after Dino Crisis 2. So if you've played Dino Crisis 2, you'll feel familiar with what's going on in this game, because it's just following up with what Regina had gone through. Because spoiler alert, if anybody hadn't played Dino Crisis 2, Regina goes into the future or back to the future, but we don't know if she went back to her own timeline or if she went way too far. And I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity right there.
You know, I gotta say, sorry for cutting you off, Dom,
Mhm.
but I just have to put this out there before I forget. Compared to Dino Crisis 3 and compare that to Devil May Cry 2, I will honestly say, going back and playing that game myself, I will honestly say that at least Devil May Cry 2, even though it's not the best game, it's at least stupid fun to play. With Dino Crisis 3, it's not fun or entertaining at all. It's stupid as fuck and it's boring as hell.
Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, so it's like, just given all that knowledge, I think like, yeah, lots of missed opportunities to do something really interesting, and I know the follow-up question is on the controversy for the game, which if you want I could read that in a moment, but it's it's just like they could have something there, especially with the idea of like somebody like taking the dinosaurs and like experimenting on them and potentially like having them mutate and evolve and become something that they weren't meant to become, to have some unique and different dinosaurs compared to what like people are used to, kind of similar to like the Jurassic World series, where they're like going into like experimentation and gene splicing and all that kind of stuff. So there's that.
Yeah,
But
I forgot they have like new raptors in Jurassic World. So they should like experiment with like, oh, what if you put a T-Rex together with this? What if you put this together with that? Make a brontosaurus like a carnivore or something. That would be pretty cool to see.
yeah, what if you made a Triceratops into a fucking T-Rex?
It'll still have short arms, so that would be funny.
Hey, at least that will be a better storyline than what we got in Dino Crisis 3, honestly.
Ooh.
Yeah, yes.
Oh god.
But it's like I mean, that idea is there. It's just how it was executed, very poorly done. I will say though that the jetpack thing I thought was kind of cool. I mean, you could maybe see that as a very like precursor to like Vanquish with how that game works. But it is what it is.
I don't know
Anyway,
about you guys, honestly, before I forget. What do you guys think about this real quick? What do you think if Dino Crisis 3 was actually a prequel before the first game? Like, do you think that would have worked better? Knowing it would take place somewhere completely different before, like, Regina's time?
Yeah, I will say yes, because that will make the story less damaging. But if they did make a prequel though, like why? Like what would be a connection? Because
I mean, when you really think about it, because in Dino Crisis 1 there is technology from the future. So what if like, because there is like because they do time travel in the second one, so they have that technology. So what if like the characters that we saw in the third game took place before the first game, and then that technology developed? Because who knows what technology they used in the first game, but in the second game, like right after the first, they have the technology to time travel and stuff. So I mean, it does make more sense that it could take place before the first one, even though it's not. But it would make a little bit more sense than what the timeline is for all three of them.
I could see where you're going with this, where it's like maybe the like third energy and like some of the shit that kind of influenced the events of the first game.
Yeah,
have been a result of
three.
it. Yeah,
because I'm like, you got like
see that.
futuristic technology and like with bio weapons and stuff like that mixed in with like prehistoric stuff, and that's what the second game was, which they did have the technology to time travel and all that stuff. So I mean, it does make more sense that the third game could have took place before the third one, because it did have those scenarios mixed together. So I mean, you got a futuristic game mixed with prehistoric times. I mean,
I could see both sides of the spectrum. Like let me real quick, Brandon. I can see both sides with like the plot line that needed to be resolved in Dino Crisis 2. I'm sure everyone's going to be wondering what the hell is going on with that. At the same time, they did take like entire civilizations through the time travel machines and they put them in certain times with the dinosaurs. So it could work if that happens at the end of the game. I just don't know how they would resolve that final plot point that everyone's going to want with the whole Regina leaves Dylan, she goes to try to help him, and they're doing a prequel with entirely new characters. So it's kind of weird in that regard a little bit to me.
Yeah, if I recall right, too, in two, is like they were unintentionally transported to the past, so that kind of resulted into the events of two,
Yeah.
which is why.
Well, the thing is with number 2, I think after the cliffhanger that we got in 2, I think that should continued in number 3 instead of what we got for 3.
Mm-hmm.
That way, it wouldn't leave us on a cliffhanger, because they see, my idea for this is like, if they were going to end on a cliffhanger with 2 and then 3 came out and then that was a shit game, I think Capcom should have really should make a 4th one to continue off the second one, like skip over the 3rd one and then continue the second one to the 4th one. That way we know exactly if Regina give us that closure and see if Regina actually made it back and saved Dylan, or maybe this is older Dylan now and Regina, and now they're in a different day, different time, doing a different mission.
Yeah.
I mean, we just want to see that closure to the cliffhanger. They can't just like end it at 2 and then make a completely new game and continue it off another sequel. That makes no sense. There has to be closure to this.
I think one cool premise would have been the idea of her getting stuck in the past and her not having access to like all the technology that Sort and Trat does. Because now it's like, oh well, you're just a civilian. You got to deal with like some more conventional arms in this time period. So that would have been cool. They kind of did that a little bit with Dino Stalker as well, going back a certain time periods where they have like old technology.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have a question later on Dino Stalker, but Dino Stalker is the only game after 2 that somewhat adds in a little bit more context to that storyline. But even then, it's not a whole lot from what I've come to understand. It's kind of its own standalone story.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, let me just read on number 4. As a follow-up question, did you hear about the initial idea for Dino Crisis 3 and what it was originally intended to be, where it was going to be in a city sprawling with dinosaurs that were going to rampage throughout that particular city, maybe similarly to Resident Evil 2 and 3 with the Raccoon City event. This was ultimately scrapped due to the 9/11 terror attacks, so the developers wanted to avoid any controversy because of that. Do you think they should revisit this idea in the future, or maybe not?
Okay,
Can
I
I
want to
answer,
speak
can
on
I
this
answer
one.
this question,
Let
Orn?
me see.
Mrs. You go ahead. You go first. I go next.
Okay. I have to explain this really quick. Okay, I can understand the whole 9/11 thing happen, and I can understand them taking that scenario out. So it does make sense. I sincerely think they should go back and not have it take place in New York City, but in a different city. That would actually, because we haven't really gotten a Dino Crisis game where it actually takes place in a city, and I would really like to see more open world, open environments, just kind of like seeing kind of like a repeat with RE3 where you're Jill Valentine wandering around Raccoon City. Just have it more open world where dinosaurs are invading the city. I sincerely think that Capcom should do that for either a 4th game, or if they decide to remake it, then I think they should go back to that. Just have it take place in a different city instead of what they were originally going for. But I seriously think they should go for a city environment, because I would really like to see a more open world and more incidents occur.
All right. I want to speak on this. Now, I can understand trying to avoid controversy, being that it literally just happened at the time. But by mindset right now, speaking in 2019 as this recording, I think it's kind of dumb they decided to not do that, considering that they have games like Resident Evil and Devil May Cry and other titles that take place in cities or like landscapes where huge populations, and you go around murdering shit. So I think it's kind of weird they decided not to do that. Like even if it didn't take place in New York, though, I would say at least they could have delayed it by a year or two, or just change to say if it was going to be in New York. Now I understand, like given the time it happened, though, with sensitivity and whatnot, I'm pretty sure they didn't want to release it though. But still, it's a game with dinosaurs. Nothing about terror attacks happen in the city. So do think it's very weird they decided to like cut the original concept in favor of what we got now with Dino Crisis 3. I feel like they could have just delayed it.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
It's fine. I'm finished.
Okay, considering let's just talk about like development of games, because we got to remember these guys have a timetable of what's expected of them, when they have to release a game, and I do remember they did have what they wanted envisioned for Dino Crisis 3, right, or and all that. So whole controversy with 9/11 and whatnot, I think the reason they had to really completely deviate, right, go outer space and make it completely different was just because of that. And I mean, with the amount of time they had to work with and the way they had to really kind of stray away from any kind of controversy, I mean, it made sense why Dino Crisis 3 was kind of poorly made. I mean, that's just my opinion. But I mean, just like going back to the question, I mean, I would love to see it come back. I mean, think about it. Remake. I mean, we kind of saw like a glimpse of a city that's completely ruined. But can you imagine like just roaming with dinosaurs though, but kind of like in a similar setting where darkened environment, we don't really see the raptors and they could just jump on you at any time. I think it would be like a perfect setting now if we're looking back.
It would also be really great too that what if Capcom decided to make Dino Crisis 4 instead of a remake, and it took place in a city, and that's where we get left off, and it begins with the cliffhanger with Regina going back to her own time, but instead of going back to her own time, she goes to another time that takes place in like an abandoned city or something like that, and there's raptors and all that.
I think that's a question later. Yeah, that's I think that's the next question or something.
Yeah. So unless Ren, you want to go before me.
Well, the only thing I have to say about this is that I would have really liked the idea, but as everyone said, I would have just changed the city to avoid the controversy. And Capcom, they were putting out games that was taking place in cities near that time period. Some of them differ, obviously. I think DMC1 was like this giant gothic structure.
I was speaking on
DMC1 came out in 2000 and so
no, it came out in 2001.
DMC2 was like
in Japan it came out in 2000.
DMC2 was like still cities, right?
Yeah.
DMC2 and DMC3 were both in a city, and then actually DMC4 and DMC5 are also in cities. So technically, most of the franchise has been in a city.
Yeah, so you get my point. Like, I just wish that they would have changed the town or made a fictional town, and they wouldn't have to worry about any of that BS. But I can also see they were on like this tight ass schedule, so the only thing they could do is like either delay the game and it will hit them where it hurts, their wallets or their development money, or just make a game and try to put it out there as fast as possible. Obviously that idea did not go swell because Dino Crisis 3 turned out to be a giant dino turd. So
here's what I would have done, because I do like that idea, and I do agree that like they could have made a fictional city similar to like Raccoon City. Hell, they could have even made references to Raccoon City in that if they wanted to, just as a little like joke. But that's beside the point. I think that what they should have done was they should have looked at like, oh, you know what? We kind of did this with Code Veronica because that was an arcade game before it became its own like an actual like RE game on its own. What if they took Dino Stalker and just completely remade that into Dino Crisis 3 and just make it take place in the the jungles of the past?
As long as they have like good writers and a good team behind it, then I'd say go for it.
I wouldn't mind the
all they would have really had to have done at that point is just add in extra stuff, extra story points and stuff like that, because they have the general story synopsis and whatnot. They would just have to change it to have it make sense for a recreated game like that.
It makes sense. A jungle was actually cut from the original Dino Crisis. As a fun fact, they put it back into Dino Crisis 2, but I think if you go there early, the entire place is like poisonous, so you have to get like a suit in order to go through there. Yeah,
and you also have to get a flamethrower to burn the plants that emit the poison. What I was gonna say too, what they could do, because we know that Dino Crisis deals with like time distortions and stuff like that, is with the city to kind of make it feel off or different. Is they should or they could with like a new game have parts of that city when you traverse through it have like these spots that have been completely like removed and replaced with like jungle areas, and basically like time swapped, if you will, or like have areas that look like they're supposed to be in that time period but they've been overtaken by like prehistoric wildlife. I think that would have been a really like interesting idea if they were to go that route. That could obviously apply to a Dino Crisis reboot or a Dino Crisis 4 or whatever they decide to go as far as like titling is concerned. But I do think that the idea is something that they shouldn't shy away from, especially now, as opposed to at the time. Yeah, it kind of makes sense why they did that, but now if they can revisit that idea, I really hope they can. But if we can have Deva read number 5.
Oh, I didn't realize you guys were finished. I was waiting for you to finish.
Well, yeah, I was going last.
Right. I mean, I'll read number 5.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all right. If Capcom decide to reinvigorate the Dino Crisis franchise yet again, what would you prefer? A remake, a reboot, or a legitimate sequel to Dino Crisis 2 and 3? Explain why. And for a bonus question, what kind of style gameplay would you want next for Dino Crisis? Action, horror, or hybrid of both?
Ooh, can I go first in this question? You guys don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For this one, I would actually be a little different. I would actually do something like make another Dino Crisis 3, but give it a subtitle and make it an actual direct sequel towards Dino Crisis 2, and leave the original Dino Crisis 3 as a separate title, as maybe a what if or something else. Leave the imagination. Let you guys decide that. As for playstyle, I will probably lean more towards hybrid, but probably favor action more, given that the setting of the game. Something like that, Ren. Yes, Halloween. I like Halloween 2018. The way they're doing it, just disregard a lot of old continuity. But I would say more favor of the action side, because if we're going like, let's say back on the previous question, like city landscape, though, I feel like action oriented would be more favorable. Good example of this actually was another Capcom games, Resident Evil 3. That's more action oriented due to the setting of the games, as opposed to Resident Evil 2 and 3. I'm sorry, 2 and 1. Apologies on it. You guys can go.
Let me see. I'll be honest, I don't know. Remember I said that Dino Crisis 2 was my absolute favorite, but you know what? Just for the franchise's sake, I wouldn't really mind having a full-fledged reboot for the whole series as a whole. Just make it a clean slate, so new fans could come in, old fans could still recognize it's still a Dino Crisis, but we're gonna start off again where the setting for Dino Crisis 1 started, follow up with Dino Crisis 2 and what happened, but the gameplay is gonna be consistent with a hybrid of both horror and action for both. It's not going to be a drastic change from survival horror or panic horror to super fast arcade shooter. So, and then for Dino Crisis 3, we're actually going to have a legitimate answer as to what happened to Regina after she went through the portal, what happened to Dylan and his daughter Paula. I want those questions answered, and in the end, it'll give us a nice cohesive storyline overall.
Okay, so I agree with mostly everyone here. I would prefer like a legit Dino Crisis 3, but realistically speaking, I know that if they want to reel in those people who never played these games before or they don't know anything about these games, they would either have to get them reintroduced some way in some fashion. So I would think maybe they should try like either remaking something or rebooting something, so you have the basis of the remake stuff they could work on and improve for like future entries, or they could just reboot it entirely and say, hey, this is Dino Crisis. The only thing that's familiar now is the title and the main character Regina in an entirely new setting. But yeah, ideally speaking, I would want them to continue on from Dino Crisis 2, but realistically speaking, they need to get everyone up to snuff with what happened to the previous characters. And it would be just kind of time consuming, so it's up to them with how they do it. Personally, I don't mind either way as long as I get a good game. I would want the style to be a hybrid of both because, like I said, you rarely see those like action horror hybrids, and you're not alienating like one person who likes survival horror or action. You're just bringing it in and mixing them both together. So I think that would be pretty sweet.
For me, I actually, for me, I would consider to see the franchise being totally rebooted because, considering as long as it was being made by Shinji Mikami himself, because the game was created originally by him. So I would really like to see, because knowing the fact that Dino Crisis 1 came out 20 years ago, I would love to see what Shinji Mikami could do to his own creation now. I would like to see what kind of changes that he would do, and maybe we could see like new characters being introduced in the series with Regina, Rick, and Gail, and Dylan and Paula and all them. If the games do not continue on the cliffhanger of 2, I would say just completely reboot it, rewrite the story, and I don't necessarily want the games to be just survival horror. Like I want to see survival horror mixed with action, but as long as it's not like Dino Crisis 2, like over the top arcadey style action, I'm completely fine with that. I would really like to see, especially from Shinji, where he can go with the series 20 years later.
It seems to make a game like that, it will have to be all about like precision, like speed is a very very important thing in Dino Crisis as a key to survival. So you got to be fast. If you're not fast enough and you don't have like really decent reflexes, you should die like rather quickly, because that was a big draw to the first game. Like these enemies are much faster than you are. So you got to be quick on the draw. You got to go for headshots. Otherwise, that's a good way to introduce like action and horror. Like if you aren't good enough, you're going to die.
Exactly. Like there's actually like no going back when it comes to this game. Like I want it to be more challenging as well when it comes to like gameplay and all that. So I don't want the game to be, I want it to be sort of like what Resident Evil is, but like a bit more challenging, especially games that are being made now. I don't want to see it be like a really short game. Like I want it to be more challenging, have good character development, better story, and just see where it goes from there. And like I said, just I don't want it to be easy for anybody, because I'm like, you're facing dinosaurs with this, so it's going to be quite challenging to walking down each corridor and facing each raptor and in any hallway, or no matter where you turn. It's just I want the puzzles to be challenging too. I don't want them to be as complicated as the original ones, but somewhere where it just would make a whole lot more sense and just less complicated. Because I feel like there was a few complications when it came to the first and second game. So hopefully there is going to be some stuff that was even unanswered for the first two. Also, I like to see like more places to explore. But all in all, I really do want to see Shinji Mikami come back and see what he can do 20 years later with his own creation. So I think that would be completely good to see a complete reboot of the series instead of just a remake or just a continuation of 2.
Yeah. So like I'm kind of like 50-50 on this, because on the one hand, like yeah, a remake would be really good, because then you can kind of retell the stories of the first 2 games. And I'm actually kind of surprised that 3 didn't end up becoming like a Xbox One backwards compatible game, or that it didn't even get like an HD remaster alongside Dino Stalker. Not that those games are like super vital to the story or anything like that. Really, you only have to play the first 2 games to get a gist of the story. The other 2 games, Dino Stalker and Dino Crisis 3, are not, unless if they make a Dino Crisis 4 where they really tie in those elements from Stalker and 4, then you're really not missing out on much. But But at the same time, though, I can understand if they wanted to go with a reboot, it would make sense just because, I mean, Dino Crisis has not been around for nearly almost a like 2 decades at this point. Because what was the last game came out, like 2003?
I believe it came out in 2003. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost been 2 decades at this point.
It's 2003, so a couple of years. Yeah, 2 decades.
Yeah, so it's like at this point, it's like it wouldn't be a surprise if they came out and did a reboot. And for the longest time too, like there were rumors going around that both Onimusha and Dino Crisis would be getting reboots because they hadn't been around for such a long time. And I mean, I would believe it. Like if Capcom decided to want to reboot both of those franchises, it would make sense.
And when you really think about it too, there's like a lot more options that they have. Like, what if I think somebody in here was saying earlier, like, what if we had like what if scenarios, just like with Capcom did to Robert Kendo and Catherine Morton in the RE2 remake, even though they weren't characters that were really lasted long. So I would really like to see, okay, if they decide to reboot Dino Crisis 2, or something like that, or say like a character died, or let's say like Dr. Kirk, you can play as him and be like, okay, what if this happens or this happens, you know? I would really like to see the other side of the characters that didn't really have a lot of screen time or even died. I would like to see their scenarios leading up to that incident and see like, okay, what would happen if this guy didn't die by this raptor, or what if Dr. Kirk actually escaped, you know?
Yeah, just like things like that even could work because they could, with the reboot, they could change a lot of those things and it would be okay. As far as like gameplay style is concerned, like I kind of am on the same page as Ren, where I would want to see like a hybrid, because I do like the horror aspects, and I do think that a Dino Crisis game should have a very strong focus on survival. Whether or not they have the horror elements is, to me, is like kind of a afterthought. Like I always look at Resident Evil like, at least if you want to make a good Resident Evil, you have the horror as the backdrop and survival as the forefront, as like the main focus. And if you can do that, which is what the classic games did, and even the Resident Evil 2 remake and stuff like that did, if you can have that as a focus, then you've made a good Resident Evil game, because you've focused on the survival aspects more so than the horror. Horror should be your backdrop. So in this case, like I kind of feel the same way, although even strongly so, because I feel as though survival should absolutely be a forefront. I do think that action should be thrown in there, and then horror elements can be in there as well, and they could all kind of like a trifecta blend of sorts.
Also, Dom, I gotta interject. Did you talk about what James said in the chat?
Are you talking about gameplay?
He talked about the camera angles.
I know exactly what he would say, because him and I have a similar opinion on this, and we've kind of talked about this off air. So one of the things that both myself and him agreed is that, like, at least for the action portion, like an over-the-shoulder cam would make sense. And I do actually think that some of the mechanics from RE6 would actually work pretty well for anybody that liked the more arcadey style of Dino Crisis from like 2 and 3. Do they need to have like... Yeah, like, do they need to have, like, the ridiculous, like, melee kicks and stuff? No, but I do think that, like, at least, like, some of the dodge rolls and slides, like, yeah, that stuff could probably work, and it would make sense, because you're technically playing highly trained soldiers as opposed to just, like, agents and, like, one soldier.
Well, when you look at the character of, like, Dylan, like, he would be the type of guy that does, like, flips and all that shit, so I'm like...
yeah, like...
Certain characters, yes, but not every character. Just it would look ridiculous, but
yeah, like I feel like if they had like each character like can dodge a certain way or has like certain attributes that they have strong suits, kind of similar to how like RE1, like when you play as Chris, he's able to evade zombies better than Jill. But on the flip side, Jill is able to take more hits and is able to like kill easier and
You
stuff like that.
you
It's all the
actually
way
have that
around.
backwards. Yeah.
Did I have it
It's all the way
backwards?
around.
Yeah,
But-
Chris takes more damage.
But you get my point though. Is like the characters can have like hidden attributes and certain skills that could apply to them. But yeah, I do agree that at least an over-the-shoulder cam and hell, if they even make it play like the RE2 remake, then yeah, I think it could work that way.
I would love all that, except I think that the melee would be OP in this case if it even
Well,
functioned like
that-
RE6.
That's what I'm saying. Like don't include the melee, just include the dodges.
No, I was
Just-
gonna like add on something to that. They should bring back the sub weapons from Dino Crisis 2 that you could use to like defend yourself. It's like a little like Regina would have a stun rod, Dylan would have a machete.
Or a
Sometimes
flamethrower.
yeah, sometimes you can create like walls of fire around you. So that would be like a nice little get off me perk. But you can like not spam it at all. That's how I would make it work somehow.
That would be pretty interesting. I could totally see that.
Yeah, I could also absolutely too. Before we move on to the next question, the sprint mechanic. I feel as though that's something like on top of like the stamina mechanic. I could see that working very well because you're probably going to be running from dinosaurs a lot. So,
Yeah, 'cause
I'd
the dinosaurs
rather
are pretty
not-
fast, so
Okay,
it would
I'm
make
not
a
gonna
lot of
lie.
sense.
I'd rather not have a stamina mechanic. Admittedly, I'm sick of that mechanic in games because most of the time it's trash. Like
Yeah.
no stamina mechanic, please.
Yeah,
just let me run.
Are you talking about the? Oh, I'm sorry,
The
the stamina
stamina,
bar
yeah,
thing. I hate that shit. Yeah.
I
never
don't
mind.
think
I
they
take that back.
ever. I don't think they ever made a game where using the stamina bar was fun, like at all. So I
No,
would
it was
prefer.
annoying.
I would prefer it if it's not in a game like that.
Have
Guys,
they
it's a video
really? I
game,
mean,
not real life.
when you really think about it, though, like how many games have you seen nowadays that had a lot of stamina bars in it? Like,
Souls
I
games
mean-
for one, and
Yeah,
they're
but
they're
usually,
annoying
like,
in
a
those
lot
games
of-
too.
usually in a lot of games now, like usually it's like ridiculous, like unlimited running now. I mean, it is fun to do, but like, on all honesty though, like how many like big games have you seen that they use stamina bars anymore?
Red Dead.
Do they
Yeah,
still
Red
do
Dead's
that?
one of them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Red Dead 2 has a stamina bar.
Well, shit. Well, okay, it's Rockstar, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, here, guys.
I mean,
Here's actually a quick. I'm sorry, like, I'm sorry to cut it, but like, I just had to put
No,
this
you're
in. Instead of putting a stamina bar, right, and the constant movement, like, okay, if we're getting chased by dinosaurs, what if they implement something very similar to The Last of Us Part 2? I don't know if you guys are aware of the whole like I think they call it the heartbeat system, where the characters depend. It doesn't have to be just you. It could be the enemies. Where if you're running for a prolonged amount of time and then you try to hide somewhere, right? You're breathing pretty hard, or like something like that, and the enemies could hear you breathing hard, and that's
Yeah.
something maybe like Dino Crisis could do. Because like, I mean, if you're being chased by like a whole bunch of raptors and you try to hide, wouldn't it make sense if you were sprinting for a long time and then you're still panting, right? I mean,
Yeah, they could track
they
your
could
scent.
still hear exactly. And then the same as The Last of Us Part 2, they could actually track your scent, like they could sniff you out exactly. And plus the whole like they could hear you better with that, but it also goes with the other way around. They said in The Last of Us Part 2, the enemies has the same kind of, I want to say, let's just say kind of same.
Stipulations.
They're running
Yeah.
for exactly.
Yeah, you can hear
Where
them
they're-
breathing too. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
because I was gonna say like that would be totally against the player if you also didn't have that for the enemies as well, because it's like I'm always tired, but they constantly see me. So that would be a good way to balance it out. Is that you can sneak up on them too and hear them if they're breathing on you, and it's like the dinosaurs are like they do have organs and stuff like that. So maybe it would be like a hunted sort of situation where you can hear them, they can hear you, you're very close, and one of you got to take each other out.
Or you could probably like try to throw objects to the side, just kind of distract them, where it gives you enough time to like try to evade from them.
Yes, yeah, definitely have to do that. You have to
There was
actually set up
also,
traps.
Yeah, there was also too like in Dino Crisis 1 when you were in bleeding state or part of the bleeding mechanic, they would go into other rooms when they could follow your blood and shit like that.
Yes, that's
Yeah, they have to do that. I would like to
So-
see like if you're bleeding out, like have the game like more realistic, where like if you get like wounded, they can track your scent of blood, or you can leave a trail of blood behind. That way they would have a better way of finding you. So to make it more suspenseful, I could totally see that.
That means get that hemostat out fast, people.
Or maybe they could even try to use your own blood to kind of like deter them, pretend like you're smearing blood somewhere in certain areas, and they'll go to that area while you go run away to the next one.
You know, it's
sounds
kind of funny
genius.
that you mentioned that too,
Outbreak.
because if that would be really cool for a trap that you can set up. Like you can just distract him. Like you can there would be like an option where you can like smear your blood on certain objects just to try to trick the dinosaurs to like go around certain areas, to like have it more of a challenge that way. Because I'm like, if there is like, let's say there's a level where there's like a swarm of raptors, and you gotta like try to come up with a solution, and you have to like literally smear your blood or cut yourself or something like that, just to get around that, to get to the other side of a certain area. I would like to see that, just to not make it so easy for the players. That way it would definitely leave that certain aspect of suspense on there.
I could see them taking a mechanic from the Outbreak or RE Outbreak games, where you take the blood packs and just let the blood spill out of the packs, so that way they just follow those.
Yeah.
Oh,
You can throw it
yeah.
at them too.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's
Yeah,
for the
pretty good.
leeches, right? And the zombies.
Yeah, that
Yep,
was a
and the,
mechanic that kind of went underutilized, because you could lure it with sub bosses as well, but it only happened in like a few levels.
That, and I think the fleas that worked against in File 2. So
Yep.
so it's stuff
Or
like
what
that, I
if,
think
like,
it could work.
What if this works too? Like, just like Ren said, you have like packets of blood. But what if, in order to get those, you have to go to a certain area on a level? Let's say you have to like find a lab somewhere and try to find it there. And if you don't have the blood packets, you're screwed. So you would have like no choice, like to find to go around and search for blood packets. So that way you could set up traps for the raptors to get distracted. But if you don't have those, you would have to be like, fuck it. You would have to take the risk of trying to run for it.
That would be
see
cool.
that. I mean, like, I would see them maybe doing it where it's like random, like, what is it, first aid kits, or like, you know, kind of like how they had the item boxes in Dino Crisis 1 that you could open up with certain keys. Instead of having the keys, it's like you just, if you find one of those boxes, you open it up, and it might have like that as one of the supplies in there.
Yeah, like I said, there's certain areas where these objects are laying around with the like the blood packets and stuff. But there's only a certain amount that you can find, but they're like scattered, and it's either you have to choose to either find those to get around, or you just have to risk your life.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Sorry to cut you guys off though, but we gotta move on to the next question. Now we're pressed for time. All right. So who was the read of number? Was it 6?
I'll do it.
I think
Go right ahead.
What is your personal grievances with the franchise from a gameplay perspective that should be ironed out for a sequel? Examples include the overly complex puzzles of the first game, dying faster in Dino Crisis 1 alongside the notion of having no health bar, whatever the hell Dino Crisis 3 did with the terrible camera angles, and the danger system from Dino Crisis 1. I'll go real quick. I think the puzzles definitely, I don't want to say like baby me and just walk me through the puzzles, because I don't like that. I like a challenge, but they shouldn't be like these crazy codes where you have to flip letters over to 180 degrees to solve them. They shouldn't be these puzzles where it's like, oh, they give you the hint with one letter and you have to figure out the rest. It should be all like dynamic, like Remake 2. I think Remake 2 had the perfect balance of good puzzles that you could figure out, and there was like tips on the wall and stuff like that. You have to put this in a certain place in order to figure it out. There's files. I don't think that should go, but I don't think it should be where you could lose out on stuff if you don't figure out a puzzle fast enough in Dino Crisis 1. So that's the only like big gripe that I have.
Hey, Ren, actually, you left out one thing. It's from Dino Crisis 2.
Mhm.
If you don't pay attention very closely to anything, you could get lost easily, and you spend like a good amount of time with your head cut off trying to figure out where to go next, or trying to remember where to go next, or what to get, this and that. That's a problem I mostly encountered in Dino Crisis 2, and admittedly, it was very annoying.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we need a clear objective system because it's not really good in the first game. I mean, there is context clues, so that does help you out a little bit, but in the second game it's like bad. I don't like it. So I just need you to point me wherever I need to go, whether it's a cutscene or whether it's on the map.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
would
let
say,
the-
really quick, Brandon, like, I would say as far as like the difficulty of the puzzles are concerned, they could like take a similar system to like the Silent Hill franchise where you could pick how difficult you want the puzzles to be. Um, because I don't think like you said, like the puzzles, like they shouldn't be like baby mode, but at the same time they shouldn't be like so ridiculously hard that only rocket scientists can figure them out. Like they should be fairly challenging, but if you want them to be ridiculously challenging, you should have a separate difficulty for that.
That reminds me of, so
I
you're
will
talking
also
about
say
like
too,
Silent
like
Hill?
maybe if they pull the objective system similar to RE2 Remake, where it kind of alludes you to where you need to go, or kind of tells you what your primary objective is.
So Dom,
That
you
would be
pulled
good.
you pulled a Silent Hill too. You basically want, like, if people want the hardcore puzzles, you would put it on like extra riddle or something like that.
Yeah, if people want that, that is.
Yeah, that would be cool to have it as an option. But like for me personally, I'm just going to keep it on normal until I figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do. Or maybe hard. It's like just don't have it where you gotta like do all this crazy stuff with like numbers and letters. It kind of got
look,
ridiculous.
you just don't need it to where it's like you need a rocket scientist, a virologist, a fucking like like somebody who can check your peen every 24/7 or whatever. I don't know. Like just you don't need like 6 different scientists and doctors to figure out the puzzle. You like that type of shit.
How about this? Would you guys want, like, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there, like maybe like kind of randomizer in a way? You know how like in RE2, we had like the different kind of keys and all that. What if they had something similar to Dino Crisis with their puzzles, quote unquote, and all that, but the
What?
different disk and data, they'll just randomize and put in certain areas, and that's how they'll make it like a little bit difficult, I guess.
Wait, randomizer or range mode?
It sounds
Yeah,
like a
range
range
mode.
mode.
Range mode? I can see a range mode working though. I bet I don't use range mode a lot in Resident Evil, but
I see what he's talking about because like there is those moments in RE where some puzzles are RNG. But in my honest opinion, I don't think it should be every puzzle, just like a select few where, okay, here's this puzzle you always go to, it changes like every time to keep the player on their toes no matter what you play it on. That's fine, but if it's like randomized all the time, I don't think it would be fun to get through because sometimes when you're speed running the game and you're trying to get through it fast enough, you're gonna want to get it out of the way as fast as possible. So
actually, one game does this actually, which is Resident Evil 3. Some puzzles are actually RNG based because it's different combinations.
the water
Now,
sewer puzzle,
Yes.
yeah.
And not just not just that puzzle, just basically any puzzle that has like a type of combination or placement, that is RNG. And now nothing wrong with that per se, as long as like it's replay value. But Resident Evil 3 kind of took things a little overboard because there are like, I won't say 4 combinations for the puzzle inside the police evidence locker. There's one with the clocks, the water puzzle you guys mentioned, and I believe the music puzzle has RNG in it, or did they flatline that when later releases?
I'm not too sure.
The clock puzzle is still the same, but I'm not sure about the music puzzle.
The one thing that I'm surprised you guys didn't mention, because I know we were kind of focused on the puzzles, but there's something else that I feel like they could easily improve upon, and that is the way that the special ammo works. special ammo, at least in Dino Crisis 1 and in Dino Stalker, it's very different. Because in Dino Crisis 1, you take like certain healing items and combine them with maybe like your ammo, and that would make a ammo type. But in Dino Stalker, it's like you would just randomly find like special ammo or power ammo. And I feel as though they could easily take a system from like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3, where maybe you have gunpowder to craft ammo. Because I think that would be a more surefire way as opposed to just, oh, let me take the risk of using up a healing item and making like, stun darts and stuff like that to make dinosaurs go to sleep temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
Those stun darts were actually really effective when it came to the first one.
Oh yeah, they were.
I enjoyed the.
Just...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I do think that they can go about it a better way. I personally think.
I kind of like that concept. It's a weird devil's advocate thing, but the reason is because it sort of requires you to sacrifice some of your resources in order to make the darts work. I do think that should be tied to like maybe a new difficulty or something, where if people wanted to like craft all this different shit and they really wanted to like survive with less supplies, it should get higher in difficulties where you have to start to mix like health items together to make like a dart. But I did like that because it gave you sort of a means of thinking, saying, oh, I don't know if I'm going to use this to revive myself or if I'm going to use this to make a poisonous dart.
Do you think that do you think they should pull the like power ammo or like special ammo from like Dino Stalker, where you can do like increased damage instead of like the sleeping darts?
Yeah, that would give it a lot more variety, because outside of just making like darts or maybe getting like the normal shotgun shells, it feels like ammo is limited in that game when they have this mechanic when you can mix like certain things together to make more powerful objects. So I think it's a system that is interesting, but it's not as good as the gunpowder from RE3. I think they could have expanded upon that a little bit more than usual.
You know, it'd be really cool to see in Dino Crisis. I just wanted to put this out there. What do you guys think about a crafting system?
I wouldn't mind it.
That's pretty cool.
Just that, like, I would really like to see, because I know in Dino Crisis, literally Dino Crisis 1, 2, and 3, you mostly use like guns, but instead of having just guns, like, what do you guys think about like not only just having a crafting system, but what if you can use melee weapons? You know, I'd really like to see like, since Dino Crisis 1 and 2 like take place in the future and they have that technology, I was thinking maybe there could be a crafting system to making possible more powerful guns, or even melee weapons, like let's say like a certain like a futuristic chainsaw or something like that, shake down the raptors. I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
Depends how it's done, because too many games today have a crafting system, and good bit of time is either okay or good or bad. Personally, I'd rather them go to the Resident Evil route and let me get upgrades or parts just to make the gun better, rather than just like crafting these parts to make the gun better.
It's interesting because the first game tried to do this, but you just get like certain upgrades like not as good as Resident Evil. It's like not distributed across the board.
I think it was mostly on the handgun use.
Yeah, it's mostly on the handgun. I'm like, what if I want to upgrade my shotgun? What can I do with this?
Like, I think
can I just say something like really quick on that? Like, what they could do is take a similar system to like RE4 and kind of blend that in with what Dino Crisis 2 did, where you go to like a computer and upgrade your weaponry there.
Mm-hmm.
So like, like 3D printers or everything. Well, what if they had like future like crafting machines that can craft like future parts and shit that like wouldn't make sense in real life, but would make sense.
Didn't they have a 3D? Didn't they have a 3D maker in the first one? When you hit that lab before you do the letter puzzle? Because you guys remember that that level where Rick helps you do the letter puzzle to open up that hatch? Wasn't there, or was that just a hologram? I don't know if it was a 3D designer or just something for the portal. I can't remember at the top of my head.
I was gonna say something inappropriate, but oh well.
But honestly, like, what if they did have a 3D, like a kind of like a 3D designer where you can actually 3D design the handgun and craft it that way through computers and stuff? Like, I'd like to see that.
I was gonna say, will it give like Regina bigger cheeks?
Yes, please. I mean, you have the technology. I mean, who knows?
You have the technology. You can rebuild.
Technology. We have technology.
But yeah,
Perfect. Just get your
I
tits
could
bigger
see-
too while you're at it.
I could see them taking a system similar to RE4 and blending that in with the Dino Crisis 2 shop system, and just kind of going from there. You know, that would actually be kind of like Dead Space, where you actually see the physical upgrades happening like in front of you, like when you upgrade your suit and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like something like that. Like there's like a machine where you can like build certain weapons or do it through like 3D holograms and process it through a computer and do it that way, considering like it does take place in the future.
Oh yeah,
So-
just like real quick, like Death Space will be perfect because I did kind of feel like when you did mix and match like items in Dino Crisis 1 that it took like way too long to do. Like when you're making stuff, you got to see, is this going to be this, is it going to be that? So I think Death Space having the quick menu would really work out well.
I gotta say also about the puzzles, I would really like to see them less complicated, because when you look at the puzzles like the DDK's disc, those were a pain in the ass. And I would really like, just like Ren and Biles said earlier, I'd really like to see where a less complicated thing and you know, have it optional, just like whatever difficulty that you're playing, so that way all players don't have to suffer through one difficult. Like if you really want to do it professionally, like have the puzzles really challenging that way to make it like really complicated. If you really want to challenge, but honestly, just have the difficulties just normal. Have it optional for whatever player is skilled better. When it comes to the health bar, I don't really think a showing a health bar would be the best idea. I think they should go with like a heartbeat meter, just like kind of like with RE2 Remake did. I would like to see that for the health. And with the camera angles, I would always say fixed camera angles, but honestly, since I don't think Capcom would do that in today's technology under the RE engine, I still do believe that the RE engine does have potential to do all three camera angles, like first person, over the shoulder, and fixed camera. Because
I'm gonna be
if you
blunt
guys-
here that freaking fixed camera angles in Dino Crisis should not be a thing anymore, especially after what happened with 3.
Let me rephrase that. I think if they're gonna do fixed camera, I don't think it should be a permanent thing. I think it should be an optional thing. That way, because I know a lot of players like certain camera angles, so I don't think certain players, like old school players, would think like, okay, there would be options where you would have fixed camera angles, first person view, or over the shoulder. I've said this for a while back too with the RE2 remake, and even though sadly that happened, during 2020, I mean, of course the RE engine is going to have like a new model, and it's going to be updated and stuff. So who knows what kind of technology that Capcom will do with the RE engine, or how advanced it will get. But if you guys have saw it, there were actually images that Capcom released a while back regarding the RE2 remake, where they did have the RE2 remake shown in fixed camera angles, over the shoulder, and in first person. So it does have potential, but I would honestly say that at that time, it was still fairly new. So, there was only certain things that they could have done with the engine. So that I can understand, but I think now, maybe if the RE engine does get more advanced, I think Capcom could be able to do it. But have it
By the
optional.
way, can you wrap it up though, because we're still pressing time.
Oh yeah, go ahead. That's all I had to say.
Yeah. Okay. What question were we on? Number 7.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and read this one off real quick.
Okay.
How would you rank the franchise from best to worst? I think it's pretty obvious. So it's either going to be 1 or 2 at the top, and 3 and Dinosaur at the bottom.
I'm gonna answer this right now. Dino Crisis #1 in my book. Then it's Dino Crisis 2, and then fuck Dino Crisis 3. I don't call it, so it doesn't count in my book.
It should be Dino Crisis 2, 1, Stalker 3.
I agree.
Stalker would be probably dead. No, actually, 3 would be dead last. But if I had the choice, yeah, it'd be 1, 2, Dino Stalker, and 3.
Yeah,
But fuck 3.
I think with for me, it's gonna be Dino Crisis 1, then Dino Crisis 2, then Stalker, then 3. And then I think it's just Ren and Brandon that haven't gone, or just Ren.
Oh, mine's is easy. Just Dino Crisis 2, Dino Crisis 1. Nothing else exists.
Same. Same.
What
I
is
take
this
that back.
Stalker?
3 and the other 2 don't count in my book.
If
Never
you
did.
can, because I'm not sure you might be able to emulate Dino Stalker. I would say emulate it. It's just the only problem with that I've noticed, even though it is kind of a standalone thing, the audio is really fucking loud for no reason, and there's no way to adjust it in game. But I can read off number 8. It's interesting to note that Shinji Mikami has gone on record and admitted that he failed with making advanced AI for the dinos during the development of the first Dino Crisis. What features should they incorporate to remedy this within the RE engine if they were to ever do a proper follow-up or reboot or whatever the case may be? I think we kind of covered this earlier where we were saying like they should be able to hear your heartbeats and follow your blood trails and smell you and stuff like
Track
that.
your senses and all that.
Yeah, so
You don't
I guess if there's
honestly-
anything else that we can
And
cover.
the thing with the dinosaurs and the AIs and the in the original, like, of course, like, there would be some fuck ups with the AI considering it was made back in 1999. Or I would say 1998, and then it came out in 1999, but still, it was back in the 90s. So, I mean, technology has advanced a lot since then. So, of course, like, I'm not really surprised on that. But like I said earlier, I think Shinji Mikami should come back and just reboot the series because I really want to. Because before I forget, he didn't make the third one. He left after the second one. After when Capcom severely fucked that game up. But I would really like to see his closure on what he can do with the first 3 and just end it with the third title. Like, I would really like to see his perspective on what would he do after Dino Crisis 2, like give his own perspective and how to tell the story. And, you know, I think it would be his chance because considering that is his creation, I'd really like to see his creation of a third game. And see where that would take place with like character development, story-wise, atmosphere, and it'd just be really it'd be a nice change to see the Godfather survival horror come back after 20 years. So yeah.
What we have since Nemesis, since you're going, why don't you read off number 9 because I don't think you read off any of the questions.
What do you think of the plot and characterization that Capcom does in all the Crisis games? For me, I actually did like the character development of the first game. I did like the development of Regina's character. I think she was kind of like a Jill/Claire character in a way. Rick, on the other hand, and Gale, I liked Rick's sense of humor. I sincerely think that they should, if they decided to reboot the series, I think that's one aspect that they should keep of him. Gil, I thought he was a major badass, but I don't know. I really do think with his character development after when he died, I think he should have lived, which was kind of the disappointment that he had to sacrifice himself in the end. Let's see. With Dylan, I thought, okay, I have to say this right now. With Dylan's character, I thought he was pretty cool, but the thing that really threw me off was the ending that I thought the plot twist was really dumb on the reveal that he was actually Paula's future dad, I don't know. Like it just kind of threw me off. I thought it was kind of a cheesy ending. Um I think they should have done a little bit better with Dylan's character in the end. But besides the ending of that storyline, I think the character development of him was pretty good. Paula, I really wish that we should have seen more of Paula's character, honestly, kind of develop besides what we got. So, but it is what it is. And with Dino Crisis 3, fuck that game. I will not say anything about that game.
Yeah, actually, I got brief thoughts on this. Yeah, I just love Regina's character. She's like a more sassier Jill Valentine. Her introduction in the first game is like, oh, that's disgusting. That tells you right there, she's a good character.
Dude, I loved her sense of humor. That's the thing I really loved about her.
Also, there's one thing to note. With Dino Crisis 1, there is alternate endings. So there is endings where Gale dies and Gale lives.
Yeah, isn't the canon ending he lives?
I don't know because they
I'm pretty sure it was because he injured at the end of the first game and Regina had to knock him out.
Yeah, but since they didn't show those characters again, it's up in the air. But I would like to think that he lived along with Rick.
It's just kind of complicated because like I do consider Gale dying as a sacrifice to save Regina. It just was kind of like, I don't know, it just made more sense considering the place that they were in was going down. So I'm like, okay, it's either Gil stays behind and with Dr. Kirk after when Dr. Kirk died. I don't know, it felt more of a better way to end Gale's character, just to sacrificing himself for his own team to live. I don't know, the other ending where he does live, I don't know, I felt like there was no justice to it. I don't know, it felt more right for some reason.
Yeah, it's weird, but since they didn't bring those characters back,
the canon ending is where Gale actually lives. That's the canon ending, so he might be hospitalized.
Like I don't see the point of like him living, because like if he die, what would be the point, you know?
I mean, you can also say why Barry's alive in Resident Evil 1, you know?
Yeah, but that was I don't know, that made more sense though.
There is one thing, like, just a little bit of a sidetrack here. That is one thing that I want to see come back, but Capcom just won't do it. I kind of want to see side characters die off and give us more alternate endings, and they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, why is that? I wanted to ask the same thing. Like, what the hell?
I was saying that in the Discord call, like, yesterday. Like, I don't know why they stopped doing that. I guess it's because they, got tired of doing the whole, oh, you gotta guess if this ending is canon or not, so we just scrapped this entirely.
Or maybe it's because they would piss off a lot of people and they'd bitch about it. I don't know.
Hey, if they bitched about it, you could easily choose the ending where the character lives or dies, so at least they give you the option, right?
Well, you know what? Do you know what I think it is too? Because whatever ending that you have to go back and replay the entire game. So I think that would be the frustration of it. So you wouldn't know what ending it would be.
So, like, it wouldn't matter.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's what I'm kind of. That's what I want to ask. Like, that's what I kind of am guessing right now. Like, okay, if you go back and get like a shitty ending, that means you would have to go back and play the game again, which would really piss fans off. Which with me, I wouldn't really care because I like the alternate endings. But like I said, I think in today's generation of gaming, people don't have the patience to go back and play the game twice just to get the right ending.
I just remember this was one of the cool things that Silent Hill used to do. So, they still had like a canon route regardless with Silent Hill 1 to Silent Hill 3, even though Silent Hill 1 had all these different endings. So, I don't think it really bugs me too much. Actually, it gives the game more replay value to see those endings anyway.
Or better, just why not make just a DLC like what they did with Robert Kendo and be like, okay, what if this happened? But I sincerely think it should be just replay value.
What about like what if they do like a B scenario like RE2 where you finish the game like as a single canon, but if you really want to know the true ending, you play it the second time around, then you get a longer ending.
I could see that maybe.
Yeah, I would. I mean, anything that they can do to make the game longer would that I wouldn't mind at all, because I do want to see like the a reboot of Dino Crisis, but have more stuff being playable that they weren't able to put in with the graphics and the engines that they had back in the 90s. Because they are able to put so much in a game now, and this is their opportunity to do it. But I don't know why these companies want to half-ass their projects. I mean,
Yeah.
if you ask me, I think it would be a pretty good idea to like add stuff or just add a new storyline, or just add it to the original story and just continue it and just make the story longer.
For sure.
There's a lot
so
of
we do actually
most-
have to wrap up. So I'm gonna read off the last question just so that we can kind of get our final thoughts out. Otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't mind going on for another 2 hours, because it is a fun discussion to have for sure. But to close off this podcast, did you see the Dino Crisis fan remake? And do you have any hopes for that going forward?
I gotta
I've
answer
not
this
seen
first.
That remake.
I
I've
gotta
not
answer-
seen that remake, but I have heard about it.
I gotta answer this right now. Team Arkley did an amazing job. I love it. Regina looks awesome. I'm really excited to see Rick and Gail. The gameplay trailer, like even Dr. Kirk. But they actually released the gameplay trailer for Regina, and I gotta say it looks absolutely amazing. And I made a few videos on this as well. I do think that which probably I'm guessing right now that if Capcom does find out about this, it will get shut down. But I did say before in the past that if it does, it would be a good thing, because this will because people want a Dino Crisis remake for a long time. And I think this would be the opportunity to open Capcom's eyes and be like, you know what? This will influence them to remake Dino Crisis for fans. And just like they did with Resident Evil 2 Reborn. And if that happens, I do want to see Team Arkley's work with Capcom to remake Dino Crisis, because they did have Invader Studios work with Capcom when they shut down the RE2 Reborn fan game. So I mean, I hope for one, I hope the project gets shut down, but if that does, I really hope it does influence Capcom to remake the game. But I also would like to see Team Arkley team with them to actually bring that remake to us. But other than that, like Team Arkley's killing it.
Yeah, man, that trailer or gameplay, that was that was amazing. They need to hire those guys. I mean, if they really want to make a Dino Crisis 3, I mean, I could envision it looking exactly like that, but in a different setting.
Same. It's like I don't have much to say on it because I didn't see like that much of it, but from what I seen, it does look pretty good, and I hope that it's the same thing as Invader. They decided to go out of their way to make this fan project of RE2 Reborn, and it influenced Capcom to make the game. Now I know, like, deep down in the back of my mind, this is going to get a DMCA because it happens all the time, but hopefully this gives Capcom some goodwill to go out and say, okay, well, we want to make the game now, we're inspired, let's take you in, what were your ideas, let's take them and utilize them and see what we could work with.
And the thing is, too, like, I have to say right now, like, fans wanted a remake of 2 for the longest time, and it's just kind of funny. I just, out of all this time, Capcom was ignoring the fans, but how ironic was it that as soon as somebody decided to make a fan project for RE2, then they come out of the woodwork and say, hey, we're remaking this, like, really shortly after fans knew about it. So I'm like, if Capcom...
To their credit, though, they did while they did shut it down, they did got the team or some of the people that worked on that fan remake on board for the most part.
Invader Studios, yeah, they actually went out there and worked with them. And I was telling some people about this earlier that I don't think we were ever going to get a remake of 2 if it wasn't for Invader Studios doing that fan project. So I really hope. I really do. It's just kind of obvious. It's just kind of weird because, like, for the past 15 years or possibly more than that, almost 20 years now, fans have been demanding Capcom, and they haven't responded to anybody up until the point that Resident Evil 2 Reborn was a thing. And then all of a sudden, now Capcom comes out and says, hey, we want to remake this. Why? It's because it was money, because people wanted that game so bad, and they saw that the amount of praise that RE2 Reborn was getting, Capcom was like, you know what, we can make a huge profit off this because this is what people want. Because honestly, if they didn't come out with Invader Studios, if Invader Studios didn't come out and do RE2 Reborn, I don't think, in the back of my mind, I don't think RE2 Remake was ever going to happen. I'm just saying right now.
I want to play like a little bit of devil's advocate, because I think they wanted to do RE2 for the longest time, but apparently, according to what people have said, they said that they took that time to not do a RE2 remake after the first one because of RE4. They spent all their developer time on that instead. So they kind of forgot about it until that sort of thing happened, where people were very interested to see them remake the game. And I think it is definitely due to fan demand for sure.
Yeah, it's just I really hope, like, well, for one, I'm really happy that Invader Studios actually made that, because I don't know, just something tells me that if it wasn't for them, I don't think Capcom would have done this. Like, they probably would have done it eventually, but just not in the time that they actually came out and announced it, you know, probably way later on. And that's what I want to see with the Dino Crisis remake. I really hope it happens, and I really hope it'll do the same thing to Capcom again, just like it did with Invader Studios with the RE2 Reborn, so that way we can actually get a, you know, Dino Crisis remake. So maybe I'm crossing my fingers that the project does get shut down, that people do send this to Capcom, so that Capcom can be like, yeah, people want a Dino Crisis remake, and here's a fan project. Capcom, like, what are you waiting for? This is good for you. Like, get a good team, you know, bring Shinji back, because, you know, people want to see him come back too. You know, if they do it, then this is a really good step for them, and, you know, and so forth with the remakes. And, you know, lastly, that I have to put this before I forget, with the remakes, I sincerely think Capcom, after probably Code Veronica, or possibly after RE3, I think now is the time to go forward with the RE franchise with Resident Evil 8. Because I think at this point, when RE7 came out, I think Capcom are kind of stuck on coming up with new creative ideas that's never been done. And that's why I think why they're sticking to remakes right now. I mean, you can argue the fact to say that Devil May Cry 5 was probably a prime example. Like, yeah, that was a new game that in the series that took a right turn, but with Resident Evil, I think their problem lies with that, you know. And I really would like to see this story continue through new characters and stuff, but I think that's where Capcom's kind of struggling right now. But hopefully we do see more in the future. But
yeah, I'm optimistic for the future, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Nobody has any final thoughts though, because I'm going to open up intros.
Oh no, we're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Just making sure, because I don't want to, like, you know, cut people off now and just end it off abruptly.
Yeah.
We all good here? Got our pins out?
Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I got everything out.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm optimistic for the future. I want to see what happens, but until we see those next gen releases from Capcom, there's no telling what they will do or how they will do it. They made two great games with DMC5 and RE2 Remake, in my opinion. So if they continue this thread, and some people said Project Resistance was fun as well, I totally don't mind them making more quality content as long as they provide the fans with something that they want to see. Then I'm totally for it.
Agreed.
Hey, alrighty. For outros, who want to go last? Renegade, you go.
No, I'll go first. So you can find me on Twitter at rentoperative_, YouTube Renegade Operative. I'm working on some side stuff, and this podcast is gonna go up like maybe tomorrow, so look forward to that. I also made a review on Joker, so if you want to see my thoughts on that movie, you can see them right now on the channel.
You incel.
I'll go next. You can find me on as biodevil_dom on YouTube and on Twitter. Getting close to finishing up the RE5 review. Still waiting on some commissions from Derek for the Onimusha review, but both of those should go up around the same time. And I also have a Project Resistance video coming up soon. But other than that, nothing else going on.
Diva.
Right.
You're
Oh, yeah. You guys could find me in my YouTube channel. I do cover a lot of Resident Evil content. I did cover Dino Crisis and The Last of Us, so you guys can find me there. It's HeyDevuh, Deva, and you can also add me on Instagram, Hey Deva, and HDeva for Twitter.
all right. Nemesis, a special guest.
All right, so you guys can find me on YouTube, Nemesis, of course, and you can also find me on Twitch, NemesisX14. On my YouTube channel, you can, if you're interested in Resident Evil content, even Silent Hill content, or any Last of Us content or news about Resident Evil, check out the channel. But yeah, Nemesis, YouTube channel, Nemesis, and Twitch, NemesisX14. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
You can find me on Twitter, YouTube as Immortal Brandle. You can find me on Twitch as Sarah Brandle, and there's a stripper dinosaur in the chat.
I was like, what the fuck is that?
A fucking dinosaur on a swimming pool.
God dang it, Ren.
That is so random, but funny as hell.
Okay, and is
Opera
there
Dove.
anywhere else we can find you, Brandon?
I'm here.
Hey, did you end the recording? Because I'm done.
Dom has to outro himself.
I already outroed myself.
Oh, good. Well, play Dawn of Dreams. There you go.
Fuck Dawn of Dreams.
So everyone's outro?
Yeah, unless if I need to repeat myself. I mean, you all should know where to find me. I think Ren leaves all the links anyway down in the description.
All right, so we're gonna have this guy go slap some Japanese titties. We had a good time stream. We will see you guys later, and when we go live, we will let you know. I don't know what the next podcast is, but I have to take a look at it. I think we're going to do the horror movie thing next.
A lot of planned stuff too. So
yeah, a Tekken podcast, all that fun stuff. So we're gonna be talking about it. So
there's a Tekken
The
podcast.
movie or the games?
all the games.
Okay, because you said the movie. No, you're not going to square up outside.
But we will see you guys in Streamland later. Once again, take care. Hopefully you enjoyed this.
See you guys.
See ya.
Stripper dinosaurs.